Hey, it's Mo. A couple of people were interested in a review of this, so I thought I would oblige. I got this palette when it launched. It is not the reason I took the day off, but I happened to have that day off, so I was able to order it like literally right when it launched. I don't normally do that, but I was like, hey, whatever. I decided I'd give it a try and see if I could get it. And this is from Tati Beauty. It is their first release, and this is their pressed powder palette, Textured Neutrals Volume 1. So it is called a pressed powder palette, as very many palettes are now, because some of the things in here are not intended for our use in the immediate eye area. We've seen that more and more, I would say, over the last year. There's more glitters, there's more dyes that are not recognized by the FDA in the US as eye safe, and some of those things are contained in here. So that's why it's called a pressed powder palette rather than an eyeshadow palette. And I wanted to point that out. It's not unusual. I mean, it's happening more and more and more, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. So it comes in this sleeve with Tati Beauty kind of raised and a bit shiny. This is the back packaging, ingredients, that kind of thing. It is vegan, it is cruelty free, it is made in the United States. So this is the sleeve, and then it comes out like this with kind of bronze raised lettering on that soft touch matte black, similar to NARS. I think that's a good way to phrase it. That matte black packaging, it's got that soft touch, very attractive, but of course I think the number one complaint, if you want to call it, about this kind of packaging for any kind of makeup is that it gets dirty right away. This is not a first impression. I've used this a few times and mine got dirty like the first time I used it. So Tati Beauty in the print, and then down here is written, looks like handwriting, says Volume 1. On the side, kind of like a book, Tati Beauty, Volume 1 again. And then the back is pretty simple, nothing of note there on the back. And then when you open it up, there are the colors. So the idea behind this is that it's 6 columns of monochromatic shades, and then in each of those columns, each row has a different finish. So that's probably just a confusing way of telling you that this is all blacks, this is all browns. From top to bottom, this is kind of an orange, this is more of a camel brown, this is more of an ivory, and this is more of a kind of a magenta fuchsia deep pink. And then as you can see going up the row, it looks like Connect 4. There are different finishes. So that's the basic idea of the palette. As you go up the rows, a little tricky to hold here. So the bottom row is matte. The second row is called sequins. The third row across is metallics. And then the fourth row, which you can probably tell pretty easily, is glitters. So those are pressed glitters. I don't wear glitters on my eyes just for the sake of eye safety, and I wear contacts. So for me, I knew going into this that that's a row I'm not going to use, but I am going to look at it because it looks pretty. That was just my own decision. This is a $48 palette. If you were dividing that by the 24 pans, that would come out to $2 per pan. That, of course, is not including packaging. It's not including the mirror, which I'm going to be very honest. The first reviews I saw of this came in PR to people. Mine, of course, I purchased. And they were all going on and on about this mirror, which is pretty big. But I was like, you know, were they sent copy points to talk about this mirror? Like, it's a mirror in a palette, whatever. But since I've gotten it, and I've told a couple of people this is honestly the best mirror I've ever seen in a palette. So I was completely skeptical about what's the big deal about the mirror. It's a really nice mirror. It's large, and it's really nice. Like, it's a legit mirror. So I take back my skepticism on the mirror. It is really nice. Something I wanted to point out that I didn't realize until I got it is that each of these pans, with the exception of the glitters, all the other pans are 1 gram shadows. So I often use ColourPop as my reference. A ColourPop palette, like those 9-pan palettes I sell, those are each 1 gram. That's the same size as these. Now this palette is much larger, and the pans, the diameter of the pan is much larger, but it's the same amount of product, which would suggest, you know, that it's a shallower pan. I always say that, like, you can't tell from just looking at the size or shape of a pan how much is really in there. So in this case, like, this would be the same size as a shadow that was in a ColourPop palette. It's neither a positive or a negative, it's just I want you to know the size. So these are 1 gram each. The glitters are slightly less, but I think that is because there is less weight and there's more packed in there and that kind of thing. So I don't know that that's a totally fair comparison, but roughly you're getting 1 gram of shadow per pan in this palette. So when you go across the colors, the deep black is Memory, the brown is Ritual, this warmer, I'd say orange leaning shade is Story, the camel color is Soothe, this kind of ivory shade is Aura, and then the last row, the more pink row, is Poet. So those are all the colors. And you can fairly well see the finishes as well. To me, the most interesting row, and I don't know if you're gonna get it, there we go, it's a little better. The sequins row, that second row up, that is my favorite row. It is, I mean, basically what it looks like is a matte with glitter in it, but in a more refined way. This one in particular, this Poet, has kind of blue reflex in it. I think that's super pretty. So just looking at this palette, like if you just gaze upon it, I think it's really pretty to look at. So for the swatches, I'm gonna go column by column. I just think that makes the most sense since these are monochromatic. And I'm going to start with, I think I'm gonna start with the pink shade and go over to the black shade. So we'll start with Poet, and I'm gonna go from matte to sequin to metallic to glitter on each row, just so you know kind of what I'm doing. So this is Poet, which is the more pink row. And as always, I just kind of dip in. You can obviously see those. Live swatches as always. So that's the glitter. And I think you can see that shift in the sequin shade here too. Not shift, but the sparkle in there. So that's Poet. The ivory shades here. And the glitters definitely feel rough, although they're in kind of that, they're kind of that pressed glitter format, that they're in kind of a viscous base, I guess I'd say. Not sticky, not oily, but they're in some kind of suspension. I don't have words. I don't know what I'm saying. So here's Aura. The matte on me, you don't see well at all. And then this is the sequin shade. Probably catching a bit of that sparkle, metallic, and then the glitter. And that is Aura. Soothe is next. That's kind of the camel row here. And you know, I never dip in terribly hard to these things. I probably err on the side of less than more. Just so you have a sense of what I'm doing here. That is Soothe. Trying to catch the sequin sparkle here for you. Maybe you can see that. So there's Poet, Aura, and Soothe. Next row is Story, which is kind of that warm orangey. You do feel some grit, for lack of a better term, in the sequins row, the one that's kind of the matte with shimmer. This is Story, matte, sequin, metallic, glitter. And you can see the sparkle in the sequin. And I do apply this, when I do the sequins, I do pat them on with a finger. I don't brush them because I feel like the little sparkles will kind of dissipate if I do that. Ritual is next, which is the brown that I used the matte and I used the sequin in my look today. I use the term look very loosely. I'm just throwing eyeshadows on. I don't know if it's technically a look. So this is Ritual. And that leaves us with Memory, which is the row of black shades. I will say this black matte in Memory, that thing is no joke. That is a serious matte black in a good way. I mean, that's not messing around. Interestingly, this is the one metallic memory that I feel like is a little crumbly and it almost looks like a glitter in the pan. I don't think it quite swatches like one, but it does feel different to me than the other metallics. That's the one I was referring to. Just seems a bit more like a glitter than the other metallics. Here's the actual glitter for memory. So there's story, ritual, and memory. Today I just thought I would do a look with it to give you an idea of how these shadows perform and that kind of thing. So if that's helpful, there you go. For my purposes today, I'm not going to stick with just one column. I think I will kind of mix around, which again, you can do it any way you want to. That's, you can always do that with any makeup. So I'm going to start with, I think, Soothe for me, kind of transition, crease, and I am using the mirror for this. And I'm just dipping in. This is the matte shade, by the way. I guess I should clarify that since it's a multi-textured palette. Again, this is just Soothe, kind of that camel shade that I'm putting into the crease and blending up just a little bit. So there's that. Nothing earth-shattering about the color. As with the other times I've used it, I feel like the mattes blend very nicely, which I appreciate in any eyeshadow because I don't want to fuss with it too much. I don't want it to be too difficult, and I don't want it to stick in one place and then I have to kind of drag it around. I haven't had that happen with this palette. So there's Soothe in the crease. I think I will go into Ritual, which is, again, I'm using the matte shade at this moment of Ritual, kind of going back into the crease. I'm using the same brush. I often use one or two brushes to do my eyes. I don't have 1,000 brushes on hand because frankly it just takes me too much time. And most of the time when I'm getting ready and going to work pretty early in the morning. So I don't have the luxury of that much time. So this is blending nicely in with that other color. Again, just kind of a deep matte brown. It's not a color we haven't seen before in many other palettes. But nonetheless, it's performing well. And I am gonna use a different brush. I do have one smaller brush that I like to use kind of for the outer corner, outer V, outer part of my eye. I never know what term to really use for that. I'm gonna use Ritual again with this smaller brush. I love this mirror. I feel like a weirdo saying how much I like the mirror because I didn't believe it when people said it, but I like the mirror. I didn't think I would care, but I care. I actually like to be proven wrong. Sometimes I get a little too sure of what I think I know, so it's good to be reminded. I don't know everything. Just kind of going back in. No problems with the mattes. I actually showed this to, here's my life. So none of my friends care about makeup at all. I have one coworker who kind of does, so occasionally I'll talk to her. But I always make friends with the people who work at Sephora. Like I don't make friends with them, we don't hang out, but I make acquaintance with the people at Sephora, and there's a girl there, and she really wanted to see this, so I brought it in to work so that at lunch I could take it and show her. And what she said, and I thought was interesting. She wanted to get her fingers in there and play with it, of course, but she said, you know, you can say whatever you want, but the truth is in the mats. I thought that was interesting. And she swatched the mats, and she was pretty pleased with that. So I just thought that was interesting. So that's just Soothe and Ritual. I've done nothing particularly special. And I think I'm going to go into Ritual's Sequin Tone and see what we get. So it's the same color, but it's got those little teeny fine sparkles in it. And I am patting that on just with my finger. Are you seeing the shimmer there? I think you are. Oops. Almost reached into the wrong pan. So what I will say is nice is because the base shade of this is the same as the base shade of the matte I just used, it's not taking me any like great work to blend it together. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh, well, there's that color goes perfectly because it's basically the same color except it has a different finish. And then I misplaced my brush. Just gonna blend that very slightly. So I think you can see the shimmer. We've used matte, we've used sequin, and I think I would like to use, I definitely want to use a metallic. I don't think I've used Aura yet, the metallic version of Aura. And it does look quite pretty. So that's what it looks like just very quickly. Now I will say I find that a nice wash of shimmer, but to me it's not like an in-your-face boom. Now it's building up more there when I go back in. But I think my impression when I looked at this palette was like the metallics would be super metallic and there wouldn't be a lot of room for subtlety, shall we say. But I think it does give you that opportunity. Perhaps more than I thought it would. I'm going to see if I can get a little more punch out of that color. Just for the sake of argument. I like that look. Like, I'm perfectly content with that. I would do that, I would put on some mascara and I'd be good. For the purposes of this, I thought I may add a little more color, and I really want to use that Poet row because this is the row that I'm most interested in, and I'm going to use the Poet metallic and just see what happens. This may not be a good idea, meaning from a look point of view, but I still want to see what I get. So there's Poet going on, clearly adding more of that mauvey pinky vibe to the center there. And it allows me to take this look in a direction that I may not have initially thought of. Because I think I would have thought like camel color in the crease, maybe some Ritual, and probably this Story warmer shade because we see so many warm palettes. But there's something interesting to me about putting this more pink, cool toned shade on the center when I've used a lot of brown. I like that look. And I'm going to go just with my little finger, I'm going to go back into Aura, the Aura metallic, because I put that other one on. I'm just going to drag it into there to blend it just slightly. And I believe it is self-evident, but I am not a makeup artist. I am merely a makeup enthusiast. Okay, so there is the look I did. That was pretty quickly. And I'm very happy with the look. I think that look at least was very easy for me to do. I would love to use the glitters, like they look super fun, but that's a risk I'm unwilling to take with any glitter. It's not specific to this palette. When you look at the back of the sleeve, there's an asterisk and some of those shades say not intended for use in the immediate eye area. So there is an eye warning, if you want to call it that. Certainly on the glitters and on some of the other shades. So I would encourage you to look for that on any palette that says it's a pressed powder palette, because they are calling it that for a reason, because it's not an eyeshadow palette, even though people are buying it for their eyes. So I'm very pleased with that. I like the look. I like the way they performed. Because I've used this palette a few other times, I can tell you that it's going to be on at the end of the day and still look pretty good. It won't look exactly like this, because I'm usually 12 or 13 hour days with my makeup, but I feel like the longevity is pretty good. It was interesting. I really went back and forth about whether or not to order this palette. Now, I mentioned that I ordered it the day it launched, so that in and of itself is like, do I want to deal with the hassle? Am I just ordering this because it's limited edition and I want to make sure I get it? And I'm going to be honest, that was part of it, and I had curiosity. I was curious about this palette. What was it really? What was it like? Because I think I had seen a couple of reviews before it even launched, and they were PR packages. And I'm always a bit skeptical about PR, because someone has given you something, and in this case, it's someone who has a presence on YouTube, and I'm watching YouTube reviews, so some people may look up to, Tati, who created this, or they may have, emotional feelings about her one way or the other that may affect their review. I don't know that. I do not. I certainly know who Tati is. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. So I'm just judging this palette on its own merit. And when I ordered it, I thought, okay, I'm not going to use the glitters. This is $48. I may have just gotten this as something to be part of my collection, because I do collect makeup and I make no apologies for that. It's something I greatly love. But when I got it and started using it, I have to say that I have been genuinely impressed with the formula, with the quality, with the mirror. I know that's so nerdy, but it's true. So I feel like this is a good palette. Do I think it's worth $48? Yes, I do, because it's 24 pans, and when you break it down, again, if there was no packaging, if there was no mirror, if there was nothing other than the eyeshadows, that would still only be $2 per eyeshadow, and I think that's okay. I kind of wish they were a little more than 1 gram. I wish they were a little larger than that. But by the same token, I really can't complain at $2 a gram. I don't think that's a outrageous price. I appreciate the notion of the monochromatic color scheme with the different finishes. I think that's different. I haven't seen that before. So I think I went into this with some trepidation, thinking like, is this just a shiny object that I'm ordering because it's a shiny object? But in the end, I actually have used it a fair number of times, and I haven't been disappointed with it. And someone specifically asked about this palette for mature eyes, which I have. I'm clearly not in my 20s, and I haven't had any trouble with it. I have no problem with shimmers. I have no problem with any of that stuff on my eyes. I don't have any rules for myself about at a certain age you have to stop wearing shimmer, or at a certain age you shouldn't wear glitter. My choice of not wearing glitter has nothing to do with my age. It has to do with I don't want to scratch my cornea. It's really pretty simple. So I did go into this with some skepticism, some hesitation, but I'm pleased with it. And I'm pleased with it from the perspective of a person who is not in their 20s. So I feel good about that. And if, maybe you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s up, whatever it is, that's a personal decision, absolutely, for what you want to look like, what kind of colors you want to wear, that kind of stuff. For me, I think the formula lends itself just fine to eyes of any age. So that's kind of my take on it, and I do hope that was helpful, because that is my only purpose here. Thanks for hanging out and talking makeup. I absolutely love this stuff, and I will talk to you soon.